So call the meeting to order. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Historic Resources Commission of the City of Albany. We certainly invite our guests here this evening, as well as those viewing on YouTube. If there are any comments that need to be made, we request that people keep their comments to the matter at hand under the jurisdiction of the HRC, and that they keep their comments to 3 minutes in duration in the interest of everyone's time. In attendance this evening, myself, John Myers, the chair of the commission, Commissioner Garrity, Commissioner Pinckney, Commissioner McEnany, Commissioner Hacker, and representing us is Mr. Thomas from the Corporation Counsel's office, Christopher Lohman, the senior planner for the planning department, or senior preservation planner, planning department, and Aaron Glennon, the deputy director of the planning department. And Maryland, and Commissioner Kaplan is approaching her spot. So,
but you all get past the accident.
what accident? No.
Way back.
Well, I declare we do have a quorum of the commissioners. We have two public hearing agenda items, or items on the agenda, and one public workshop item on the agenda. Without further ado, we can start with the first public hearing item, and that is 48 Bassett Street in the south end of Prospectville Historic District, seeking a certificate of appropriateness for work proposed on the building, as well as infilling some historic window openings. I see Dan Sanders is here representing the...
And Prince is here as well, the applicant.
Okay.
Thank you.
So if you would like to proceed with
Sure.
your presentation.
Good to see you all again. Danny Sanders, Howard Sanders Architects, representing Prince Hines and property at 48 Bassett Street. Currently a vacant property, and Mr. Hines is looking at redeveloping the masonry building, masonry 2-story, and with a full basement into 3 units. I don't know, Aaron, if you have a floor plan or, but, okay, there you go. So plan on the screen right there represents 2 of the units, and then the third basement plan would also include a 1-bedroom. So two 2-bedroom units on the upper 2 floors levels, and then in the basement redeveloping it for a single 1-bedroom unit. Formerly, those were the circled areas on the right side on the elevation were for a former fire escape, which we believe was there because those are door openings, so that the each flat had an access to a stairwell exterior. I don't know what the condition was. I was brought into the project at this point, so there was nothing there, whether it was steel or wood or whatever it was. And we're looking at on our redesign, infilling those 2 floor levels. That's a brick infill from an architect's office on Washington Avenue, happens to be mine, but it's the rear elevation. So I was able to get something that's pretty close to what we're looking at. So the infill, and which we've done in previous projects, including 1 or 2 on Grant Street years ago, where the state would allow break recessed infills of approximately on a 3 white wall, 1 white, about 3.5 inches of brick, and as close to a match as possible. So the example that I figured I would show was something that was very close to my heart, and also close to my office. So as far as that goes, that's what we're proposing in these areas. It's the side of the building still. It's not the front. The brick will be a closer match than that was, but as far as match, we can review that with the commission or with Aaron before we proceed with the actual brick infill. The owner has accepted this proposal. That would be an insulated infill from the inside with sheetrock flush with the interior of the building of the unit, which would be in both cases a bedroom and then an infill area where a bathroom would be provided. From the standpoint of just economics, we feel that this plan maximizes the potential for the property. I think that's very important that we were able to get 2 bedrooms on each floor and a nice open living room, and with some framing modifications, an open kitchen and open area to the living room, and maintaining stair location within the interior of the building. On the exterior, we will be providing a new stoop, proposed a metal railing, which is consistent with the railings on the street. We've already received a proposal. West End Iron Works for that rail, a very simple 3/4 inch top, 3/4 inch spindle, and 1 3/4 top rail. So that would be also an improvement. Obviously, there's nothing there right now. And then access into the basement would be beneath that stair. And so that would be the basement access. From a code standpoint, again, we have the single stair, but those would be egress windows on the upper floor, so that there is no need for an exterior stair, which would be eliminated, which is not there right now. That's pretty much the presentation. If there are any questions, we are doing some window replacement in kind with the requirements of the historic resources, whereby they would be the front facade windows. The front elevation windows are proposed to be Anderson 200 or 400 2/2 configuration, consistent with the 1 remaining window. And the rear windows would also be a 2/2 configuration, but we're proposing a final window in the back. Those are the sole windows in the project.
You can go with 1/1 in the back. You don't have to go with
Yeah.
1/2.
Correct. Yeah, we could. Yeah, there's no need not to. Appreciate it.
What's going on in the basement?
A 1-bedroom flat. And then there is some mechanical room space, utility space down there as well for the water heaters.
That's not in the
Full.
floodplain.
No, it was I believe it was a unit at one time. The windows are large enough for that.
What's on the other side of that empty lot?
Which one?
On
To
the
the left.
left,
To the left, yeah. You got
empty
the
lot in the back of somebody else's property.
So there's an empty lot.
Yeah, there's
Left
empty
your building,
space.
And is there another building?
Is that Green Street?
Is there another building?
It's another building's shed in the back of their building. I'm sorry, I can't, I'd have to zoom out, but
Green space.
Yeah.
48 back, but vacant lot and then another building.
Okay, all facing.
going next.
All facing separate.
Except for the ones that are in the picture where the shed is, that's the rear of the next properties on Green Street. That's in front on Green.
48 Bassett's the first one on Bassett, as you're coming from Green. And there's, yeah. So again, the width of the lot incorporated, I'm not sure what the stair was, but at least 5 feet or 6 feet of additional space for the egress.
The ones that you are proposing to leave an indentation and to brick them up, were they windows?
They were doors. Well, one was a door, one was a window on each level. Sorry,
You think-
one door and one window.
You think they were originally doors and the 2 of them were dropped down for access?
I think there was, towards Bassett, they were both doors, and then one further back, I believe, is a window. It's a smaller opening. Okay.
So it was originally a door then.
One on each floor was a door, one on each floor was a window.
Thank you.
Question. Have you, Aaron, reviewed the front facade work?
Yes.
Because he's only here,
Yeah.
he's only here for the side.
So as the project stands, we find that everything outside of the infill is considered a staff review, and it all meets the requirements of DEC. And, we see it as a benefit because it's becoming an use.
Can I make a motion?
I have a
Oh,
question.
sorry.
This proposed stoop, which I guess you find acceptable, is just a pressure treated wood. And the other question is, doesn't the application say that the windows are going to be repaired, the front windows?
It shouldn't have said that. There's only one remaining window. The rest are openings with plywood.
That's not what the application says.
So this application was submitted twice because of an amendment for the addition to include the infill, so it might have just been in the second filling. I realize what you're saying, yeah, but what Prince had put on the application is that it's no change to the findings. So he filled it out, he might have meant that they're keeping the two.
It said repair glass.
But is there enough frame?
Or sorry, that says replace glass.
Replace glass.
It says replace glass in front space on the certificate of appropriateness.
So this seems to say that the application says replace glass in front 6 windows, no change to the frames, but, and then later it says repair glass, but then we see 2/2 from the original sash. I don't know what's behind the other panels, especially maybe on the upper floor. But regardless, what you're saying is that the proposal is all of the replacement windows.
Yeah.
But that needs to be corrected
Right.
because we have the wrong information.
Right, and we can correct that on the administrative side for the rest of the work. The focus of the hearing is just these 4 infills.
Does that mean that you're routinely on your own approving pressure-treated, unpainted wood stoops? Is that something that staff does routinely now, or that we've done here?
Yeah, it's identified as a minor certificate of appropriateness within the code. There is a requirement that the wood does have to be painted within a year. So usually it's time for drying out. We still do review it to make sure that any of the wood that is used is matching, finish style of what is being replaced. But pressure treated is a pretty typical material that we see through.
Do you
Are
see?
there any profiles associated with the configuration or the detailing of the stairs?
So it is reviewed like stoop by stoop. So, depending on what the detailing is on the stoop that's being placed, we do review the full nosing. Matching that, how is the board treated as, with corner treatments and things like that. So we are reviewing to make sure that our clean stipulations on those certificates of appropriateness does have to match
And be painted.
and be painted or staged.
But just to clarify, sometimes this comes up, there are also other restrictions, and this is outside of the purview of this discussion, but I'm just bringing it up because if we deal with it, is that there's still clearance of the sidewalks, certain times that comes up, and that we're in compliance with the code as much as possible, but if it reveals that it would stick too far into the sidewalk area for the current tread depth requirements of 11 inches for multifamily, then we sometimes have to restrict it to 10 and a half or 10 and a quarter tread because it would stick out too far into the sidewalk and not permit access in the sidewalk. So that's a building department issue. And again, I'm bringing up something that really doesn't have anything to do with, just to let you know, those are the other restrictions that come up in terms of stoop design. And that does come up depending on a case-by-case basis in the city streets, because sidewalks are not consistent in terms of their, what 4-foot clearance or 5-foot clearance minimum. I think
And in this case, you've got an entrance to a basement apartment, so that
So we need
has
heavy.
other,
Yep.
Considerations in
Yes.
design in the studio.
So we're comfortable with what we've done at 10 1/4, I believe, and we'll field verify it, but we could only allow 9 foot to maintain the access in the existing sidewalk. So that's shown on the plan. But again, that's outside of the review today. I'm just bringing it up.
You go for a motion now, Lee, I can really thinking about it.
I propose to make a motion to approve the proposed infill, provided the infill is recessed according to the drawings, and that the new brick matches the existing brick as close as possible.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments from the commissioners? Hearing none, I would call this to a vote. All those in favor of the motion as proposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
Okay, thank you, Ross.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda, again, the public hearing item, is 141 Madison Avenue in the Masham Historic District. And this is characterized as a retroactive certificate of appropriateness to replace the removal of a storefront window and the installation of vinyl siding, which would be replaced, I'm assuming from this proposal, with cementitious cladding. Please introduce yourselves and your relationship to the project.
My name is Phil Park. I am with PM Mechanical Trades. I'm the contractor for Ms. Van Dutch. Hired me to do the job. Ms. Van here is the owner of the building.
Hi, good evening, commissioners.
So I'll just start off kind of with the gist of the scope here. But Ms. Van contacted me when unfortunately notified her of the vinyl siding that was put on. That the building department had an issue with it, so in order to bring it back to its historical facade, there is a gold storefront glass window there. However, there is a bit of a concern with the neighborhood and just the fluctuation of broken windows and glass within that district, and also that where the window is no longer a storefront. It's actually a residential apartment, which is right into the living room of that unit. So the proposed idea is to put build that front up with hardy board siding, and then put 2 octagon, it's 36 by 36 windows to kind of give it that modern but historical look for the front facade of the building. That's kind of the gist of the project here.
So this project's been around in planning for a while, so the general kind of end of where the project started was the applicant removed a storefront window and installed vinyl siding. The department of BRC issued a stop work order back in December 2nd of 2020. The applicant applied for a permit in 2023, retained the vinyl siding in 2023. The permit was denied by the planning department. The applicant requested to go before the HRC in 2023. It was placed on the January 24 agenda, but the applicant never appeared or never performed the property posting and mail notice, after which they didn't respond. And now the applicant is seeking the retroactive COA. The denial letter noted, one, two, the denial letter noted, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 specific sections of the code. And that was a letter that was sent by Erica Corsi, a planner from the department, just so we kind of know where we're currently at. And we kind of did our staff review of it again, and we still note that it's still in violation of the same 5 sections. So that's why.
You go back to the other one. Can you get them side by side?
Two seconds.
Just special skill.
I did not see my slide. I did that.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. Great.
Maybe I'm gonna add you.
No, you're in the right one, I'm sure.
Is this the way this building looked when you purchased the property?
Yes. And the reason that I propose an alternative because, for example, my next door window got smashed and shattered too. Plus other place like 193 Southborough and the liquor store across the street, which is now they close the business because the window was shattered and everything, and including my building. So that's why I'm kind of scared to put the window back again.
Just put in context, that window is about a little short of 10 feet by 8 feet, so it is a pretty substantially sized window, so cost of replacement of said window would be a financial hardship for Ms. Pam, considering she is retired from the state.
So the glass has been fully removed at this point? There's no glass currently? There's no storefront glass that exists?
Yeah. Once it was shattered, it's so dangerous. So we put the vinyl siding out of the blue within 2 days to protect, to make it safer. Thank you.
Would be helpful to see what the building looked like and see what context this is, as well as the buildings to the left and the right. So we have a real tunnel view vision of what we're being asked to look at.
The building to the left, on the west, is one that we actually looked at. That's 139.
Yeah, that's the one.
Madison Avenue.
That's the one that says, it's a federal building that was all Victorianized.
Right.
It's right on the corner.
Yeah.
It's a significant building. And the one to the right is three, also architecturally correct historic buildings. So it's well out of context of its neighborhood and its block.
The building on the left right now is currently vacant and not in the greatest condition, but the reason for the octagon windows that I chose was on the building on the right. It kind of lines up with the window, the design that it has, so it kind of the modern touch to the historic.
Octagon windows wind up on the roof, not down by the floor. It's
usually the gable end of a building.
Yeah.
Something of that nature.
Yeah.
Was any thought given to putting, dividing this into 3 segments and putting 3 windows in that kind of replicate more the feel of a historic storefront, and then panels below to raise the sill of that window, or that grouping of windows, so that the occupant has some privacy and protection, and it's not as attractive a nuisance as a regular, large piece of glass storefront. It is more residential in character, but still preserves the openness of that, large opening, which is an important historic feature of the building. This may have been constructed originally as a residence, but it evolved with a storefront and a commercial. And it is a very, Madison Avenue is a very commercial street, albeit it has some troubles, to deal with the safety and some of the vagrancy issues there. But I think there are ways to deal with that opening that are sympathetic to its history and its creation as a storefront, and still provide the degree of privacy and security that you're looking for the occupant. Again, I just offer that for further discussion by the commission members.
The width is 10 feet, you said,
I believe,
approximately?
10
And
feet
the
by
height?
8 feet.
height is about 8 feet.
It's about 8 feet. So, John, is this, what I was sitting here looking at, is this similar to what you're asking about? It's possible for me to imagine, as you said, kind of, I think you said a tripartite, a 3-part,
Right.
with pretty bold framing,
Mhm.
and possibly even a horizontal member, a bold, equally bold horizontal member, approximately at the height where, say, a transom would be above.
Transom bar,
Mhm.
so.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then 3 glazed windows in the upper portion, and the lower portion, say 4 or 5 feet, whatever that is, be a solid material set back from the framing in as highly reflective material, as a sheet material as possible. Is that similar to what you were
Well, I was
thinking of?
considering, 3 windows
Glass.
in there as glass,
Okay.
providing light into the apartment as well, the residential unit. But, no, what you're suggesting is another alternative way of dealing with it. But it's subdividing that opening to come up with something that is more evocative of storefront construction that you see throughout the city.
This is an apartment now? Where's the light and ventilation requirements met? There are 2 tiny little windows that we see.
You said the light and,
Well, there's light and ventilation requirements for housing units.
right.
So are there other windows at another portion?
Oh, yes, yes.
Where?
At the rear?
So that apartment goes the entire,
Yes,
from
yeah.
the far front to the far back.
How long, right? You mean, what's the length of it?
Yeah,
Okay, I would say, 16, 15, feet, no,
it's a very tall building,
yes,
and I've got to assume that those are very deep floors.
yes,
And when the question comes up of natural light going in there, there's no natural light to the left or the right because it's got other buildings next to it.
yes.
So the only places that you can get natural light is probably the far back or
And
the
on the
front.
side, and
The
on the
side.
side of the building, yeah.
It must be less, the adjacent buildings aren't as deep. there's any.
This
That's why
this must be a very dark room.
Yeah.
That must be a very dark space if you have just those tiny square windows.
That's why we want to correct it as you
Right,
recommended, to
right.
have light in there.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think the octagon system would work.
No.
Because it just doesn't fit this style of building, you know, and I think what, your Chairman Myers and Commissioner.
Commissioners.
I'll call him, his name is John, you know, John of Maryland. But anyway, their suggestions of creating a storefront looking system, you have glass, and maybe operable windows up at the transom, above the transom, so that you can at least get some light in there and provide somewhat of a semblance of a storefront. And maybe using tempered glass, you know, which is unbreakable. And I think something like that would be something that we could approve. Because that right there is, I understand your situation.
Yeah.
That's a drastic move, you
Right.
know, and it's unfortunate that you had to come to that solution for that area, you know, because you just totally obliterated any light coming into that room.
I agree, yes. Like I said, that is just in 2 days, just get rid of the smashed glass, which is, you know, afraid to hurt people, and then put it back in to make it safe.
So was the discussion here in terms of a redesign, is that clear for you? Do you have any other questions? I don't.
Just to kind of clarify, it'd be 6 panels of glass at this point, correct? There'd be 3 on the bottom, and then you have 3 operable on top, that's my understanding.
So the proportions are smaller, as if it were a transom
Right.
above. And then
Okay, old fashioned storefront.
So it might even be, the transom bar might even be in line with the bottom of that air conditioning unit.
Right.
Across.
Exactly.
The transom bar can be similar, to be in a line with the bottom of the air conditioning unit, just straight across. Then you have 3 verticals. And above the transom bar, you can have hopper windows,
Yeah.
windows that crank open, you know, something, for some ventilation, then you have some light too.
And all the aluminum closet.
And I would suggest tempered glass. Tempered glass, something that.
I don't know the floor plan, but it may be required because of its adjacency to the door.
I will just step in because it does kind of sound like we are designing at the table. My recommendation for this, considering that the proposal that is currently on the floor is to remove the on-permitted vinyl siding and install some finishes, would be to at least deny the current proposal as it stands, as it doesn't meet the historic research overlay rehab and general guidelines, and recommend that the applicant resubmit a proposal and a drawing of what is being recommended this evening as a solution to the unpermitted work. And it would just, there's also, I think it's 368 Madison Avenue, and then isn't that Christie's property? Is that 368 Madison Avenue?
Yeah, the old bottoms up.
368 Madison Avenue up the street, and then also 52nd Avenue are both very good examples of buildings with original storefronts that were removed and altered, and then were appropriate new storefront infills were put into first floor residential units as examples, as you move forward with the project.
What numbers are those?
52nd Avenue, it was the Albany County Land Bank project.
Right.
And that was the first floor, and that's also, I believe, either that storefront that they put back is a living room or a dining room area in an apartment unit, and then 368 Madison Avenue is also a first floor residential. That's either a living room or a dining room area as well.
There's one on Morton Avenue, right next to the old school 25, is within a couple of. And it's a living room that's been, has kept the storefront open. I don't even know what the style of this building is. I don't know whether it's a new front on an old building. It's hard to figure out when it was built and what would be appropriate to the storefront that was there. We have no historic pictures of what was there originally, just.
There was one photo. Aaron.
I don't.
Would you bring that photo again, please?
The one on the right is what it was originally.
But we'll say our street view has good historic images of this if you like cycle through, actually.
The old, like, prior to 2019.
It goes back to 2007. Just, 2007.
I mean, we can pull.
Yeah, but so, yeah, for the hearing though itself, the recommendation would most likely be just a clean denial, and then they resubmit to remedy it, and then we can compile more.
I make a motion that we deny the proposed application and request that materials be resubmitted, drawings included that are more sympathetic to the streetscape and in the manner in which has been discussed.
Second that.
Comments, additional comments from the commission? I'll call the matter to a vote. All those in favor of the proposed denial and recommendation to go forward?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you for your time. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Workshop time. Pleasure seeing you all.
You're always welcome to stay. Yeah.
Where you going now, man? It's good to see you.
Going on. Sit on my couch probably.
Are you gonna zoom in?
Oh, of course, I couldn't miss it for the world. But of course, if any legal questions arise, you have my number. I'll see you all in December. Have a good one.
Yeah, when we do see him, he had like the last night of his public hearing, like marathon.
I'm here Tuesday and Wednesday nights too, sometimes until 10.
As the hasty exit of our council, we will now enter into the public workshop portion of this meeting. And it's the development of 15 Trinity Place in the Mansion Historic District. And it's a concept review for the rehab of the historic structures and a proposed construction of a 12,000 square foot addition. So, invite the applicant to.
Would you like us to?
Please.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks.
Oh, yeah. This is being proposed by the Trinity Alliance of the Capital Region, Incorporated. It's a not-for-profit, public benefit service group. Do a lot of good work there.
So this is coming before the commission this evening as a concept item. This. Do you wanna?
Sure.
Do you wanna?
Sorry. So it's coming before the commission as a concept review, primarily focusing on as we, design architectural elements, massing in the building additions, as well as the way they're incorporating it. The exact building location, as well as some of the information with the proposed curb adjustment in the packet hasn't been determined or solidified under the different board approvals. It's currently awaiting common council approval of the zoning map amendment. They have not passed the subcommittee just yet for it, and therefore it's still unknown exactly when the common council will take action. They then will have to seek planning board approval, and then one of our staffers noted that they may also have to go to the BZA for a rear yard setback and a lot coverage area variance, but that hasn't been determined just yet by staff. So that's where the project currently stands in the other boards.
So what are we doing with the old Trinity Institute? We're gonna make it residential, or what are we doing?
No, Jack, would you like to explain a little bit? Happy to do so. So, at Anchor Training Design Group, I'm joined by Alex Messina, also training designer, David Gordon from Training Alliance. The proposal for, that's in front of you tonight, is really the concept review of a proposed addition to the existing facility. In large part, the existing facility will remain in its current state. One of the things that we were, Trinity was awarded an ARPA grant, basically to study how to best utilize this building, how to go forward with this building, but offer better and more advanced services to the city of Albany and its residents in South End. One of the key components was, initially when we were hired, was just evaluating the existing building for its current condition. The building's in pretty rough shape, as budgets and long-term viability goes. At the very least, this building's going to need a completely new mechanical system and at least a roof. Along with some other kind of planning exercises, we got into a master planning, a concept review with the entire Trinity institution, all the facilities that they operate in, all the organizations they partner with, and also the use of the building in its current state. We took that into account along with all of the additional uses and additional programs that they're offering all over the city of Albany, and how to potentially coalesce that into one campus, as it were, in this particular site in Trinity and South End. The existing Trinity Alliance building you can see is in the center there. That's the original settlement house built approximately 1919. The existing townhouse all the way to the right exists currently. And then there's a small infill in between the two, which was actually a Bart Trudeau addition that was done in the 80s, which is in a really, really rough shape right now. It hasn't been maintained. That houses the current elevator core and the main entry to the building. That elevator core and the subsequent roofs and ramping within that space has been leaking for very many years, and there's really no mechanical systems in that space to control ventilation.
So this replaces Trinity Church that collapsed.
Trinity Church collapses. So yeah, so to the left of the page, that's a proposed new addition on the infill site where the Trinity Church originally stood until about 2010 when it was collapsed and then unfortunately had to be demolished. This infill construction, keeping with mass and scale of the rest of the community, we use some of the detailing that are on the side of this building that are reminiscent of some of the local buildings like the Fletcher warehouses around the corner. We're trying to keep the mass and scale a little bit lower so that it didn't overwhelm the existing and most historic Trinity Alliance building in the center there. We're connecting the buildings in the existing settlement house and the new construction via a gasket, similar to what Chico approves to connect the two, but also separate the two as completely separate uses. We're also using that gasket as an opportunity to create a new and functional main entry to the entire campus of the building. That will house the new elevator core, circulation between the three buildings. This building is on about 6 different levels on 4 different buildings. So trying to figure out a way to connect these buildings and allow accessibility was a real challenge. I think we'll overcome pretty well with this elevator core and kind of gasket addition towards the middle there. The new addition on the ground floor will house an expanded food pantry for the large part. Right now, the food pantry lives in what is 13 Trinity Place in the basement of the existing townhouse. Ever since, before COVID, it was heavily used. Ever since COVID, it's really outmoded. It's very, very heavily used. We did some market studies with, actually with what they do in Schenectady, with Sycam in Schenectady and how they operate their services versus what the city of Albany is, and there's a very comparable size and use that we could accommodate here in the Albany city. So this will function much more of a local market rather than a food pantry where the recipients can come in, also people on benefit and welfare, but also people in general in the community come there and shop for produce and for food goods. The upper level will house offices associated with the food pantry. Also will provide the Trinity Alliance with much needed and additional community space towards the back of the building. It will also allow some of the organizations that partner with Trinity Alliance throughout the city of Albany to have a more meaningful and permanent home here adjacent to the administration and the other functions that Trinity basically provides at this location. So expands the additional existing services, but also allows there to be a much more robust service offering for some of the other partner organizations, housed on the same campus within the same block. One of the that's kind of the general overview. One of the things that we are looking at in terms of the rear yard setback that was mentioned by planning is right now this is on an alley, and that alley is actually immediately adjacent to the property line. The proposal would be to extend the building all the way back to that common alley so we could use, and it's actually about 10 to 15 feet higher depending on the elevation along the alley than it is on Trinity Place. So we would use that alley as a proposed means of egress from the second floor of the new proposed addition. So we're taking advantage of being able to use those community spaces, larger community spaces on the back, and still allow proper egress in and out of the spaces. So it fills that site. We've tried to make the new construction somewhat subservient to the existing Trinity Alliance building, which is out on basically the street edge. One of the things that we realized very quickly because of Trinity Alliance's proximity to the edge of the street and having a more robust food pantry operations for deliveries and ingress and egress of materials and supplies. So we're proposing a small curb cut so a delivery vehicle, presumably a box truck, will have the ability to pull off of the street. And because right now, if a delivery truck pulls up in this location, it's basically blocking the entire pathway. It's so narrow.
It's a one-way and there's
And it's a
parking on
one-way.
both sides.
We studied, the ability for a tractor trailer to back in and just that and using the alley, but there's really no real good turning radius or ability for you to turn around. So the best possible alternative would be to pull the sidewalk in slightly and make a pull-off for delivery vehicles at certain points in time during the day. Administratively, they'll have to figure out when and when those times are going to happen, but hopefully this will reduce some of the congestion on Trinity Place. Not only do the employees of Trinity Place park on Trinity Place when they're there, but also the people taking advantage of services. Trinity is actively looking for other opportunities to house their employees parking and also people visiting the buildings parking. I would say most, but many of the people who take advantage of the services at Trinity are walking there, are coming by public transportation. So we're trying to mitigate that to the greatest extent possible. With that, from the get-go, we knew that the parking situation was going to be a challenge, especially if we're parking delivery vehicles out front. So this is an opportunity to mitigate that to the best extent possible. Happy to answer any additional questions beyond that.
I don't have much of, in our jurisdiction, I don't have so much of a problem with what's going on in terms of architecture. I do have a reservation of putting this much activity in one of the most narrow streets in the city of Albany. And just whether it's visitors or people getting services or deliveries, there's just no parking there. And it's, I always thought that there was going to be an extension, and I'm going back literally 4 years ago when the Crenshaw Center was started on the bottom end of Lincoln Park, that I always thought that as, let's face it, Trinity is one of the most respected and honored and historic service agencies that we have in the city of Albany for literally generations. But I always thought that expansion would go to where the Crenshaw Center, which didn't quite work. That would have been a better place to expand, and as far as the existing building there, that could have been switched into housing or something like that. I can't imagine the amount of traffic on cars going in and out there and servicing people. But it's not our jurisdiction here, or certainly my situation here, but it looks like a major development project for a lot of people, for services, and also just for employment. And I assume you looked into this and found this is something you can function well if this is completed.
Yeah, that's part of this master plan study that we did is, right now, the employees for the building, and the intent is that the employee, the number of employees for the building might increase slightly, but we're not talking about a huge influx of additional employees, regular employees, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
But the idea is that, is bringing some of those partner organizations that are kind of scattered about the wind, giving them a place to actually deliver services. Right now, they don't. Agree, we've been in conversation with planning with Brad and his team about the parking things that are going to invariably come up with this. We anticipate a similar and slightly greater amount of traffic coming to the building for sure, especially with the food pantry. But again, I think a lot of the people who are taking advantage of that, we know right now, are people who live in walking distance of this community. It is something that we're actively studying with planning.
As Ed said, that will all be under the planning board review for the parking and the traffic. That's part of the major development plan for this project. It does not fall under the HRC purview.
So what is helpful to hear from us? We've got massing, that kind of size scale. What else?
Feedback from you
From
all?
the yeah.
Yeah, I think, general concept review, is the massing appropriate? Do you feel like it matches and is complementary to the existing streetscape? We feel it is, but we want to hear back from you guys on that. The way that we're handling the introduction or the interaction between the various buildings, because there is quite a bit of infill construction, keeping those buildings independent and separate from each other, but still allowing them to converse. And then the original, called the Trudeau Annex Edition between the middle there. We're basically going to keep the floor levels the same through that area, but take advantage of reestablishing that streetscape, which was once a townhouse when it was originally constructed, and use that as basically an employee entry. The administrative offices for Trinity will largely happen in the townhouse now, as opposed to now they're kind of scattered throughout the entire building, which is really disadvantageous, not only from a program delivery standpoint, but also from an administrative standpoint. People have to walk, get out of their chair, walk down 3 steps, go down the elevator, around the corner. You know how it is. And it's a real maze. What we've allowed it to do is, with the same number of staff, administer the larger amount of programs in the same amount of space relative to that. So the biggest hurdle of this whole thing initially was the reorganization of the existing spaces. We came to the conclusion very quickly that the services that they offer are woefully underpopulated relative to the food pantry and some of the larger community-oriented spaces that Trinity is currently offering in other locations in the city. So, the other thing is site control. Trinity owns this piece of property, right? They don't have to worry about trying to find another piece of property. Yep. We actually went through an exercise where we did go and look at other pieces of property around the city that, right around the corner. What was the Elks Lodge around the corner? They actually looked at what if we purchased that building. There were some pros and cons to that. The biggest con was that this is Trinity's home. It has been such, as you mentioned, Jack, for many, many, many years. Yeah. And to leave this building just didn't jive well with the organization as a whole. And right up to the board of directors, we had that conversation with them. Like, it doesn't make sense that they charge us with investigating other locations to alleviate some of those issues. But you start looking at other locations, and then you start talking about proximity to the people that we're serving. This is really the ideal location for the people that we're trying to serve. We'll know where it is.
And Trinity wouldn't be there without Trinity Church, so it only felt right to expand on the very grounds where this was born, basically.
Is there any daycare center function going on?
Well, currently, the existing daycare functions that happen in the building now, after school functions, really, there won't be a dedicated, pre-K, 3, 4 support daycare in the center. There's not enough facility to do that effectively. However, they do house the Head Start program and the Head Start storage programs, which are now kind of like tucked in every nook and cranny all over the place. So what we're going to do is collect that into a certain area with the staff to figure out an appropriate storage solution for all the toys and the games and the books and all the stuff that they have on a regular basis. Nancy Lonsack and worked with them for years on this. Originally, a lot of those functions were going to happen at the Capital South Campus Center, which I designed a few years ago, working with Trinity and Albany Housing Authority. That relationship is no longer available or prevalent, so this is really the best possible location to deliver the services that we deliver.
So, I'm really pleased to have all the information you gave us.
Okay.
Sounds like it's a complicated process ahead.
Yep.
And the biggest items are not ours in terms of the site and parking.
Correct.
So I think you ran through in the beginning kind of 4 questions that would be, I think, I'll get to 3 and you'll give me the last one. So the breaking up of the structures. Yes, good. The overall scale of what we see. Yes, great. I only got the 2. I don't remember if it was the separate connections that you were speaking.
Yeah, I think that's
The
another
separate connections.
an appropriate way to do that connection.
Yeah, that looks great. And then I lost 4.
Materiality, I think would be, the other.
That I'm not sure about yet, but I don't know that it matters at the moment in terms of where you are. Materials and recesses and window configurations.
Sure.
They're modern buildings and can speak to that. So
They're compatible.
yeah.
I think it's a little hard to see in the renderings here, but the idea was that the facade of the building would be largely brick and stone, complement the buff colored stone that exists at Trinity currently, but not do another red brick building on the street so as to compete. I think the other interesting thing about this, one of the pieces of feedback, and you don't really see it in the rendering, but it has to do with the entire site, is right now the site is currently the community garden for Trinity. And the plan is to take that from here and pop it up on the roof with an appropriate parapet. That's what you see there. So we'll have a community garden that functions very similar to the way it functions now, just on the roof, still unprotected, get our sunlight, and it'll be able to, it'll be facilitated by an elevator, larger, I would think freight elevator.
Which building, the new building or
The new building.
The new building.
Yeah. No, we're not gonna do anything more with the roof on the existing building. It's in good shape right now. The structure is in really good shape, but the roof needs major help. It's in really rough shape. I don't think it's been replaced in about 35 years. So it's at the end of its useful life. And the whole project started with, we really need to address the mechanical systems. Right now, the existing boiler in the building, I think, is about 1960 vintage. It is running pretty much wide open. As soon as the winter season hits, it's just they turn it on and hope for the best. And it's really, really inefficient. One of the parts of the team for this entire project is we're working directly with Siemens to provide this as an energy performance contract because it's kind of a no-brainer with the amount of savings that we can generate from the existing building's energy performance because it's really pretty pitiful. And that will largely offset the cost of construction of the existing building in addition to all the renovations and new mechanical systems included in the rest of the building. The idea is that this entire complex will be fired up with a central plant so that we won't have individual heating and cooling systems for each of the individual buildings. It's all in a centralized location in the new building, and we use those spaces to kind of transfer between the two. This will all be, right now the plan is to be all electric air source heat pumps. There won't be any, likely to be no fossil fuel use in the building. We looked at some possible green roof options and we're still kind of, solar panel options on the roof. I don't know if the juice is going to be worth the squeeze on that one just yet, just because there's not enough area. But we're, the way that the Siemens contract will work is they basically will bond the savings that they're going to generate in energy performance and use that to offset the cost of the construction. Still have to raise money, but it allows us to do that over a much longer period of time rather than having to come up with, the $15 to $18 million that we need for this whole project cost. Trinity's actively engaged with the fundraising for the building right now. We've gone through that process. We've hired a consultant that we've been working with to come up with what's realistic for us to raise in a certain period of time versus over the lifespan span of the building. And it's kind of a, I hate to use it, it's kind of cliche, but if you build it, they will come. But money in gets money in kind of a situation. And there's got some fairly decent grant opportunities that we're looking at, also some private donations. So we feel pretty confident that we can fund the entire building. There's also an EPA grant that Trinity is actively involved with going after right now, that if they get that grant, that will basically fund the entire project. So it's an ambitious project for sure. I think we have a long way to go before the approvals process happens, but boy, it would be a great opportunity for Trinity to do some really great stuff in the city of Albany with the new space.
Took the words right out of my mouth. Ambitious. And it's something I think the South End needs, and I think would be a great boost.
Yeah.
I have, architecturally, I have a few comments, and I'm just noticing that building between the two brick buildings, is a cross. I'm just,
We did
figuring
not
that.
intentionally.
You didn't?
But it's crazy, now that you say it, it was supposed to happen that way. It was meant to be.
But, I
knew I liked that detail.
But I feel that it being an infill, it should be pushed back a little bit, like the infill between the new construction and the brick building, that glass.
So.
I'd like to see more glass personally, but with that cross, it's a very important feature. But I think it needs to be pushed back.
Right now, it's pushed back slightly. What we're trying to avoid is running into one of the windows that currently exists on the original Trinity building. And it actually is in line with the lower base portion of the existing annex that's there now. So we basically just took that line and drew it all the way across.
So you're saying there's a window on the brick
On the
building?
left-hand side.
In the existing settlement house, there's a window that exists there now, that is.
Oh, yeah.
We're trying not to, even if we're gonna be concealing over with some of the facade things, we're trying not to affect the existing openings on the original Trinity building. One of the things, and reasoning for the gasket on the other side is that it's hard to kind of.
I think you have a
explain
photo
it,
of that south, yeah, so
you can see there's.
gasket kind of squeezes in between where that main entry door is, and then goes upwards from there. Every window on this, I believe, is remaining, including the door, including, the surround of the door. And the gasket's just gonna kind of squeeze right in around all of these fenestrations. And I believe one of the windows that were replaced towards the gymnasium, towards the left-hand side, those are vinyl replacements, which obviously are not historically accurate, over there. One of those will just become a door opening. So we'll utilize existing openings if we need to create a new one.
The nice thing about the gasket in this location, we can see the existing openings there. Those windows that are currently windows actually become interior windows that will look down onto the atrium space from above and below. We'll also be using those as vertical circulation space, horizontal circulation space between the various floors and the ramping and the elevators at that location. Essentially, that I guess, for lack of a better word, that plaza that exists there right now will go away, and this will replace it at grade level to be able to allow proper access. One of the biggest challenges for space in the building was the fact that the existing Trinity Alliance, or the existing Trinity Settlement House, the first floor is actually sunk down below. You can see those first floor windows. There's a humongous amount of space in the basement of that building on the backside, which is buried in the hill, which is completely inaccessible but for one kind of man door. But by doing the gasket and creating an opportunity to use that, we can get down into that basement space and use that as a much more functional space. They have a bike share program, a whole bunch of, as these things go, storage that we can't get to right now. So
Alex, you're saying that although that appears to be in line with the facade, it is actually recessed?
The one between the existing and the townhouse?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
slightly recessed.
Okay.
It's not like
It's
anything
not flush.
substantial, but
Okay.
it's definitely not flush because we just didn't want it to be on the same plane as either of the two historically existing buildings.
So, I need some clarity. On the north elevation of the settlement house, there's currently a window, one that's infilled on the second floor and one that's on the third floor. Can that crossed facade be pushed back to allow those windows, because you don't see the windows now, actually.
That's correct. I think we're, plan-wise though,
You can see it
I
in the street
believe,
view, yeah.
yeah. So plan-wise, I think we were trying to utilize that upper window that's still existing, as a doorway into the room on that top level. So it's kind of why we landed with where the facade currently lives in plan.
You might be able to get another foot or something to push it
Back a
Yeah.
little bit. Part of the opportunity here was, reestablishing that street facade, but also, as far as square footage goes, which is much needed in space, it's kind of low hanging fruit on the front back of what was originally the Trudeau annex. So we're taking advantage of that space that exists, that airspace that exists to create floor areas there to house administrative functions. And it's a cruciform. I cannot believe it.
I know, I can't believe, I didn't see that either. It's what happens when you stare at it for so long.
Yeah, it has a religious theme to it.
Yep.
Why, did y'all choose to use splayed window openings on the new building on the second floor? What would your thought?
Yeah, I think it does a couple of things. It creates basically an aperture that's a little bit larger, right? So a little more present to the overall window, but keeps the actual window opening slightly smaller. And again, we took some cues off of some of the detailing that happens over at the Plesser building, a couple around the corner, where we have larger openings that kind of almost recess into the facade. This is kind of, I would be remiss if I didn't call it a modern interpretation of some of that detailing, but.
So another reason is trying to pull from, the buttresses that were on the church. So, you have those vertical delineations along the front of the facade, and having the returns into the window kind of create that effect of having a buttress on the front of the building. To pay homage to the church.
Interesting.
Without looking too ecclesiastical.
Right.
Right.
Challenge.
Yeah.
Now that we've got a cross on the other.
I know.
One of the things that we did deliberately, and kind of almost, I would say, by happen chance, but the area immediately to the left there, you can see that sudden recess portion. One of the things we realized is that there's likely going to be the need for the food pantry to have a larger opening for deliveries, but putting that out on the street facade really kind of flew in the face of reestablishing that. So we tucked that back and actually took advantage of the space on the second floor there to create some additional program space and tuck that larger garage door opening, as it were, back off the street, and also make that a little bit more A, protected in a yard area there, and B, de-emphasize the side facade of the existing townhouse to the immediate left. There's windows, and they have some views on that side of the building that we did not want to conceal and benefit to the neighbors.
So planning staff's identified concern is primarily with the amount of enclosed facade, especially on the primary entry with the gasket. That's kind of what me and Aaron have discussed, is it's a loss of about, it would be the loss of regulation under the HRO of 7 windows and the primary entry of the structure. And that's the only concern we do have, is there would be no more regulatory body authority to interact with it if in the future they were to want to remove it.
I'm not, yeah, I'm not.
Did you say, yeah, I wasn't. I
Yeah,
didn't
that
really-
either.
So, so in less fancy, so where, if I remember correctly, right out here, right? Correct. So what happened is under the HRO, we regulate what is visible from the public right of way on the exterior. So once they enclose this, we will no longer have regulatory authority of this part of the structure, which is the primary entrance of the storage structure. That's just me and Aaron's primary kind of features now.
Are you saying in the future, or are you saying as part of this project?
So once they.
Yeah, once it becomes interior.
Yeah, as part of this project, they've stated they are retaining it, but in the future, if someone were to say want to take all of the windows on the interior out,
We
have
would
no
have no
authority.
jurisdiction.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the historic facade would lose regulation of
Right.
that part.
Is there anything we can do to like protect it in place? You know what I mean? Like,
We certainly wouldn't be adverse to, some kind of an amendment or an MOU or a rider to preserve those windows. The whole idea and the intent of the gasket is to not mess around with the existing facade of the building, to mess with as little as possible.
and the reason we used glass, so you could still
So you
see
can
it
still
on the
see
street
if you're
and
walking.
road.
Yeah, to clarify, we weren't concerned about this project. Our concern is, protecting the facade in the future.
Yeah.
I guess that would be a little more, would be something that their lawyers and their owning of the land, right?
Yes, yeah.
Not really us.
I mean, Jason Fury touched on that, yeah, I believe that it would be some sort of agreement with Trinity. Have it on the books or some sort of thing that,
That would be
attached to it.
completely amenable to the
Yeah.
training, I'm sure.
I guess property transfers, having some sort of agreement as
Right.
Yeah,
transfer.
I'll email
But
Jason
we can
tomorrow.
definitely look into it.
It's a very interesting loop, so that in order to protect the historic material, you lose the future ability
I know.
to protect the historic material.
That's catch 22 if I ever heard of it.
It's great.
It's the fun part of the local municipality.
Yeah.
rules, so.
That was good. Yeah, very interesting.
Good catch. And that is a two-story open atrium.
Correct.
So that whole facade is visible inside.
Correct. Correct.
And, yeah,
That's the whole
if you
idea.
read the context of the original facade within that new hyphen used for the entry.
I think it's a great
I
concept.
think it works really well.
Appreciate that, thank you.
I want to see how the garden works on it.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
We've done quite a few green roof projects. I don't think we've ever done an actual garden.
I probably a green room has about that much sedum and that's it.
There'll be a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
Likely it'll be raised beds with structural systems.
Yeah.
to support it. Very similar to what's on the ground right now, just 25 feet in the air.
Yeah, they don't have any shadows to obstruct the.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a pretty good opportunity to do something like this.
Just need a robust parapet wall.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what
We have
we showed. And actually, the parapet wall was beneficial to hide the elevator tower back there. It pushes back, so when you're at the street level, you really can't see it.
Yeah, so you can see it here just because we were trying to encompass all of the facades in one, but we looked at it from all different angles and you really can barely see it unless you're right in this one little tiny sweet spot, and then you still only see a sliver of it.
And on the right at the townhouse?
That's the plaza.
That's what I assumed it was, yeah.
Yes, that is the plaza in the back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
The liberty of modeling the entire.
Yeah.
entire rendering.
No, did not. You can see that from the roof, it's pretty cool.
It's a really great view from the roof.
Actually, I commend you for whatever you asked them to do first, which was to help with a bad heating system.
This is what
To
architects
listen
do.
to
It's like,
and
even for the
participate
architects,
and move forward with this. It's quite a stretch. It's great. It's
We had
great.
a great time working with them. It was
Yeah.
a huge challenge from a logistics and there's a lot of moving parts over at Trinity. And getting everybody to coalesce around this. It's been about a year and a half of work to get to this point, so.
It's great. So
You
Aaron, when do you
occupy-
think we'll see them back?
So.
How long?
I'm stealing this one. It all currently hinges on the zoning map amendment
Yeah.
leaving common council, and then their subcommittee, which then it will go on their agenda.
Yeah.
Then they can go to planning board, and then after planning board will do their approvals, they will be back for approvals from us in that time. We'll most likely plan another
Is
board.
that 6 months? Is that a year? Is that, what do you think?
God.
Oh, not, I hope it's not a year.
I was
Not a
gonna say,
year.
I don't want it to be a year.
Okay.
But, it will have, it really, once it's past common council is when our timelines start to line up there.
Yeah, and I mean, we've been working closely with Alex and Ed and David circulating it for department comments as part of the development plan review.
That's
We're
great.
hoping to at least provide Alex and Ed with comments that can be addressed as we're waiting for the zoning map amendment to go through the common council.
How long is that?
Yeah.
Well, things got a little held up because of budget season, so we're hoping now, we're kind of, they're trying to catch up and get everything, before the end of the year, so hopefully it won't be too long. And then it'll start the process for the development plan review. I think if we wanted to have it back for maybe like a workshop meeting, we could do that. Just if there are any revisions, you can all see what those revisions are. Any material changes, make sure that it's still kind of moving forward through the certificate of appropriateness process. And then it can come back for review. So I'm guessing probably sometime within, hopefully, the early new year, it'll be back here for you all to review it and take action.
I have one more thought on the big new building. And it really comes from when Jack reminded us how narrow Trinity Place is. And so we're talking about parking, but, and I guess some of the starting point, which made sense, was the footprint of the church. Like that's what you have, but there's something about the scale of the block and the size of the buildings and the narrowness of the street that maybe as nicely articulated as the new structure, the big new structure is relative to the existing, and I can only imagine trying to get the floor levels to work out. But I understand that as a starting point, but it feels as if I went and stood on Trinity Place, that the way the facade is articulated may feel massive relative to, I mean, it's perfect in a rendering, right? It's just, there's nothing there, but just, yeah, just something as you go forward, thinking about the scale, what will it feel like on that narrow?
So you can actually go on
Street.
Google Maps,
Yeah.
and if you click like one tiny click over to the left,
The church.
oh, the church is still there. So
Yeah,
you can
just did
see
that.
how close and how massive
Yeah.
the church was.
Yeah.
It's literally
yeah,
right
that's a
on,
good point.
it's right on the sidewalk. So that kind of drove
Yeah.
the reason for recessing and pushing this portion of the building back. So
Yeah.
it did not feel the same. It did not feel overwhelming like that. But I mean, there's a difference between an overwhelming brick building and an overwhelming church. Churches, I feel like, have that aura. They're
Yeah.
supposed to give
Right.
that
Yeah.
effect.
Yeah.
So that's why we did choose to push it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like one little sweet spot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that is so cool.
Yep.
It was interesting, to the comment about kind of the historic facade. Historically, the church has always been there, and that portion of the facade of the existing settlement house has always been a little bit concealed, just given the existing churches there. And I think hopefully this will give a little bit more of a view into that by pushing it back a little bit.
Yes.
To see the facade. It's a little subservient, yeah. Trying to find that happy medium.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's quite successful as you construct new design within the historic context of the neighborhood and the existing historic buildings.
And Lee really likes the cross.
I still can't believe I
We're gonna have
noticed that.
So you might get your name on this building.
I know.
That's pretty great.
Yep.
You really want to be named after a gas?
No, not a gas.
We are currently working on naming rights.
Well, I know that the archaeology is being addressed because I happen to know that there is an archaeological study going on
Correct.
currently.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll, keep everybody informed as we move forward.
Yeah, we're kind of anxious to see how that transpires because obviously, a lot of the churches just pushed into the hole as it I remember, it was funny, because we were working on the Capital South Campus Center, and Harris came to one of the meetings one day, we were planning for it, he's like, "You're not gonna believe this, the church just collapsed." Like, what? We went right over there, and sure enough, the facade had fallen. It was really unfortunate, but,
Yeah.
you know, it's funny, because Tano, Demolition and Restoration did the demolition on that building, and the original windows from that building ended up in somebody's warehouse. So, no, they kind of just, nobody knows what happened to those windows, but they preserved the windows, the big tall. They were huge. There was always a little bit of a question mark whether they were Tiffany windows or not. It turned out not to be the case. But it would have been really cool. But we actually looked at repurposing within the Capital South Campus Center using it as an exhibit, but they kind of disappeared.
I think the architect, it's one of the real big ones before he got big. It's not Rector, it's,
Renwick.
it was Renwick, yeah, it was Renwick.
St. Patrick's Community.
Yeah, and the other one is in trouble, that is Holy Innocents too. It's another one, these when people were young in their career.
Well, we really appreciate your time, Tony. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Very good discussion.
Thank you. Hopefully it gets through the regulatory process in
We're in it to win.
streamlined fashion. I'm assuming that you're keeping an eye on any rooftop equipment that might appear based on the HVAC system design. Because you've occupied most of the site. There's not a lot of land.
A lot of the new mechanical equipment will be housed in the basement space of the new building, obviously that entire equipment. The interesting thing about it's hard to tell from the floor plan here, but the rear area of the existing Trinity building is the gymnasium.
Right.
And that gymnasium is about 12 feet lower than the Trinity Alliance building. So we have the opportunity to tuck some of that mechanical equipment behind the lower portion of the roof and conceal that completely from view. It might catch a little bit around the alley, but it won't be. There will be no visible mechanical equipment on the roof. Currently, there is a little bit of visible mechanical equipment that lives on the gasket, adjacent to the gasket. Last time that was replaced was about 1982. So it's a really, really bad shape. All of it has to be completely replaced. Obviously, the units today are much more scaled than they were previously in the 80s. So the air handling and whatever else we do. We haven't gotten that far yet. We have some preliminary discussions about, the air source heat pump system. We're actually finding, believe it or not, ground source heat pump systems in urban sites is something that's becoming much more prevalent. We're dealing with Aztec environmental right now, and doing some studies in downtown Troy for looking at renovating there right now that we may be able to install a geothermal heat pump system on the urban site with a very, very tight line. So I think it's something we'll kick around. Nice thing about that is that NYSERDA offers a 30% incentive from the hole in the ground all the way to the register on the wall and everything in between. So the geothermal well field typically is paid for by the incentive, and just buying the air source.
The wells are.
Yeah, it covers the cost, basically covers the cost of the wells. Yeah, which is great. I mean, we're looking at it more and more on especially on urban infill sites like this. There's a lot of area here. I don't know if we'll get enough wells to make it really worth the squeeze on that, but it's certainly something we study on almost all of our projects just to see if it's really worth it. But at the very least, it'll be air source wells. Saved by the bell. Thanks, guys. Anything else for us?
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're good to go.
No, we're not on TV here. I'll Trinity Church got its name.
Yeah.
Are there any other matters to come before us? Jennifer, if you want
I put up forth a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Thank you all. Good night. Thank you, everybody.
Does this building vibrate? Am I sick? I'm like
No, it
getting
vibrates.
sick.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sitting here.
Is the TV on?
Why?
Not yet.
It's not off yet.
Second.
Oh.
Okay, all those in favor of
Aye.
adjourning the meeting?
Aye.